Hello and welcome to Open Line. I'm Starlene Stringer. The water we drink is an important topic for all of us. We all want an abundant supply of clean water, and today we're going to get an update on that supply, offer tips for conservation, and also hit on other important topics. Our guests are Water Utilities Director Todd Reck and Programs Manager Donna Sterling. Thank you both for being here. Well, we're going to start with you, Todd. Let me ask you, let's start with the latest on the lake levels and our supply in the short term. Can you update us on that?
Sure. I think most people are aware that most of our water supply comes from Lake Chapman. It's a lake that's out in East Texas, located near Sulphur Springs, and about 85% of our water comes from that lake. It's something that we keep a close eye on. We're continually looking at the lake levels. We actually share that lake with several other entities. And so we manage a portion of our supply in that lake, and we're continually looking at it, looking at the level, looking at how much of our supply is available. And currently the lake is about 12.7 feet low, which is pretty significantly low. And our water supply, the portion that we manage, we're a little over 50% right now.
Thank you. And Donna, I know the levels rise and fall, of course, as we get rain, but why is it so important to conserve water?
Well, certainly we want to make sure that we've got an abundant supply of water so it'll meet our health and safety needs. But we also want to look to the future and know that supply is reliable, and so we focus on our water management plan to help us keep that in check. And of course, on an ongoing basis, we have our water conservation plan. So we have probably anywhere from 15 to 20 different elements that we enforce on a regular basis so that we've got enough water. But then when we have drought conditions like we do currently, we look to our drought management plan and we implement various stages of that so that we will have the water we need when we need it.
Makes sense. Okay, so Todd, let's get a broader view here. What kind of planning is currently underway for the future of our water supply?
We are part of a process. It's really a statewide planning effort that's ongoing. The state is broken up into 16 regions. We're part of Region C, which is the north central Texas area. We work with a number of different entities within Region C to develop new water supplies, to determine how much water is needed for each entity, and then determine where that water is going to come from. So it's really what we call a bottoms-up process. It's not something the state doesn't tell us where our water is going to come from. The federal government doesn't tell us where our water is going to come from. It's up to us to determine how that's going to happen. So we are in the middle of a process right now. We're working with a consultant to look at not only our needs, looking 50 years out in the future, looking at population growth, employment growth, and then also looking at the impacts of conservation. How much water are we really going to need 50 years from now? Because our demands per person are actually decreasing. We'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute, I think, with conservation. But we have had a lot of success there. So it's trying to look at all those factors and determine 50 years from now, how much water does the city of Irving need? And so we're trying to come up with those numbers right now, and then also look at the different options that are available to us, whether it's potentially a new lake or taking advantage of an existing source. Conservation is certainly a piece of that because it reduces our demand, so it's almost like a new water supply. And then there's some ways that we can reuse or recycle water, and that's something that's becoming more popular. There are groundwater options. There are a lot of things out there right now, so we're continually looking at those options, looking at what the cost of those are, and trying to figure out the best option for the city of Irving.
Wonderful. Are there other things that you think need to be done?
We, in terms of water supply?
Yes.
You know, we are continually looking at a number of different options, and part of the issue with water supply is there's no guarantee. When you look at potentially building new supplies or bringing in new supplies. So we look at many different things, and we're looking at over 20 different options right now. And so we'll be picking a few of them. We won't just pick one, but we'll pick a few of them, and that's what we'll continue to look at over the next few years and work towards developing those supplies for Irving. So it's not just focusing on one thing, but looking at many different things and continuing to pursue those.
I see. And I understand that recently the system of water restrictions actually changed. Why did that happen?
We are required by the state to update our water conservation and drought management plan every 5 years, and so it gives us a chance to go back and look at what's really working for us and where we need to strengthen our plan. And so we went through that process this last year. We actually update our plan more often than 5 years is the way it's worked out in the past. But it gave us a chance to go back and look at how we could strengthen that plan from a conservation standpoint, some elements that we can add, some new programs we can add. And then also it gave us a chance to look at what other entities in the region are doing. There's a lot of confusion on stage 1 and stage 2 and stage 3 and what that means. And so we've been working with the other entities in the region trying to get more consistent with how we classify those different stages and what that means. And so there's been a big effort. Donna and her crew have been working with other cities throughout the region to come up with the different stages that are more consistent. So when one entity comes out and says we're in stage 1, it's very similar to what another city would
well, I'm
be
glad
doing.
you brought that up. So Donna, can you tell us what the current stage is and what exactly it means?
Sure. As of September 1st, we implemented stage 1 of the new plan. The new plan was actually passed in August. So we went straight to stage 1, and that means that we can water twice a week according to whatever your address is. So that is either going to be for odd addresses Sunday and Wednesday, or for even addresses Saturday and Tuesday. And we want people to follow that schedule. There's actually a schedule posted online. So if you forget that and you need to run out to cityofirving.org and take a look under water utilities, you can find it very easily. In fact, the entire water management plan with all of our stages is listed there. So if someone wants to look it up, they're able to do that.
I hate to focus on the negative, but what if folks don't comply? What happens to them?
We do patrol regularly, and we respond to every call we receive where someone's complaining that people aren't abiding by our regulations. When that happens, we give a warning, we let people know what the requirements are, and then generally that's going to be written down. We'll give a yellow door tag if no one's at home. If someone's there, we'll explain it fully, and then if they're unable to comply, we can issue citations. Generally speaking, a first offense is going to probably run in the $400 range, but it can range up to $2,000.
Oh my.
Especially if there were repeat offenses.
It means you guys are very serious about this, and that's a good thing.
Water's important.
It definitely is. Thanks, Donna. And Todd, I have to ask you, what prompts a change in the level of restrictions? Because it could change, as you both have mentioned.
Right.
What would prompt that?
Well, we really focus, as I mentioned earlier, on the lake level as part of that, but also not just the lake level, our portion of that lake that we manage, and so there's a volume that we look at and a percentage of our supply that's available that we look at. And so when we get down to 65% of our capacity of our supply is available, that drops us into stage 1. And when the lake level continues to drop and our supply continues to drop, and we get to 45%, that drops us into stage 2. So those are guidelines, those aren't absolutes, but it gives us a guide to go by. When the lake level starts to drop, we know about where we're going to reach a point where we need to implement the next stage. And each time we implement the next stage, it increases the restrictions, and so we use less water, which is really the goal, is to try to preserve our water supply as long as we can throughout the drought.
And we've really kind of focused on homes, but I'm curious to know, Donna, how does it differ for businesses? What are the restrictions for them?
Well, the restrictions are generally focusing on irrigation because the primary use of water, both at businesses and in a residential setting, is for irrigation purposes. And so they also have to comply with the twice a week watering. But there's a host of other things that are in there. It has to do with washing your personal vehicles, also irrigating your foundation, how you can fill your pools, which we allow people to fill under stage 1 for any evaporation. The only way you could actually release all of the water and refill a pool is if there was a repair that was needed to be made. We'd have to see evidence of that. So there's a host of things that everyone has to comply with.
Makes sense, definitely makes sense. And I know, switching topics a bit here, Todd, that at this time of the year, one topic that your team works to spread the word about is the proper disposal of fats, oils, and grease. A lot of people are cooking from Thanksgiving to Christmas. So why is that so important?
That's a big issue for us this time of year, just because there is a lot of indoor cooking, and a lot of that ends up going down the drain of a kitchen sink. Our customers generally don't realize, but that goes down into their pipes that go into their house, and eventually it goes out into our sanitary sewer system. And When it gets down into the ground, it's cold down there, and so even though it may be a liquid, when it goes down your sink, it hits those cold pipes and it gets a solid, and so it blocks the flow of that sewage down the drain. So it can cause backups into our customers' homes, which is not a good thing, not a fun thing, and it can cause sanitary sewer overflows into our system, which can be a much bigger problem. So we want to do everything we can to keep that out of the system to begin with.
Definitely. We were looking at some shots of what it can do, and it's not very good looking, and imagine not very good for the pipes at all. It's
not a happy situation for anybody.
No, definitely not. Donna, so what is the proper way to dispose of those things?
Well, we want the disposal to be considered waste material, so we want it disposed of in the garbage. And the best way to do that is to drain off, and I have a few props here.
Okay.
You want to have a funnel handy so that you can easily drain larger quantities of oil and grease that's been used into a container of some sort. And I've got a couple of examples of those containers. One would be just to take a simple vegetable can or soup can and to pour what you're disposing of in here. Keep it capped. We have some lids we give away at some of our public events. Keep it capped so that it doesn't create a problem with smell. And then when it gets full, put it in the garbage and it'll be taken away. You were talking about how the pipes get coated. That happens not only at the residence and also out in the sanitary sewer system, but we brought some models to show that you've got a regular sanitary sewer pipe, and as it becomes coated, you see a little bit more lining the inside of that, and then gradually that gets more and more full. A little bit can pass through here, but ultimately it gets completely clogged.
So the homeowner should notice, because it's going to be hard for your water to actually go out.
That's right. This can happen in your personal plumbing, and it can happen out in the system. And when this happens, it has to go somewhere, so it backs up, and it'll go out a manhole. It could go out or back up into a home, into a bathtub or something along those lines, and that's most unpleasant. So we wanted people to have a picture of what that would look like. One other receptacle that I brought is one that we sell at our customer service office at City Hall. And this is something that you can buy. I think it's about $4.87, and then you can get the liners. And these are fat trapper bags. So you just put that inside here and pour off your grease, and then it has a seal on it, so when you're ready to dispose of that, you can just put it in your garbage very easily. So this is a great tool to have in your kitchen so that it's kept out of sight and doesn't cause a problem.
It looks very nice. And that's really like a weight loss program too, because when you see how much fat and grease you're pouring into those containers, it might make you do a little less frying.
The other thing that's really important is even when you're emptying your pots and pans, you want to take paper towels and wipe them out and absorb all of the grease that you possibly can. Also with your plates and any utensils, because any of that gets out into the system is going to eventually build up and have to be removed in some way. And so using the paper towels to help get rid of the excess is very helpful, and then you can just dispose of those in the garbage.
Wonderful advice. Now, Todd, what happens when people don't take that advice? What does your team have to do?
Well, we have crews out every day working on the sewer system, and one of the jobs that we have is cleaning those lines. So we have areas of town that accumulate more grease than others, and we have trucks out there in some cases every month, every few months, to make sure we keep the lines clean. And so we have trucks that can wash that out, we have trucks that can vacuum that material out, and we also have trucks that can saw out roots that sometimes get in the system. So it's a continual effort and a big part of our maintenance program on the sewer system.
Wow, so that's just one thing that's causing great concern right about now, but I know another concern is the temperature dipping below freezing, and it affects sprinkler systems sometimes. So what do people need to keep in mind when it comes to sprinkler systems and it being winter?
Yeah, the big issue there is just when it gets to be freezing temperatures, and the temperature drops at nighttime, and so that's also when a lot of people want to run their sprinkler systems, and we do require now a rain and a freeze sensor on an irrigation system. And what that does is when it senses either rain, if it senses rain, it'll shut the sprinkler system off, or if it senses freezing temperatures, it'll shut it off. because what we find out, and it happens many times during the winter, is you'll wake up and there'll be a patch of ice in the street and it causes accidents. And so we want to do everything we can to try to prevent that from happening.
And you said that you need to have rain and freeze sensors. Is it something that people can easily access? How do they get them?
You can get them at any of the hardware stores around town, sprinkler supply systems. You can buy them that actually attach onto your irrigation controller. So they're readily available now. A lot of people are using them. In fact, most of the people in the Metroplex, the cities now require them. So you should be able to get them at a lot of the retailers around town.
Yeah, and at this time of year, I know a lot of people are wondering, how do I protect my pipes? What do you recommend?
And I know Donna has some props for that too. I think I'll let Donna talk about that.
Okay, sure.
Well, to insulate your pipes, we suggest using some sort of foam insulation. You can get something that's prefabricated like this. You could buy at a hardware store or at a discount store in town. In addition to that, you could also wrap in newspaper or rags and use some duct tape to give the extra insulation, just to keep everything warm so that the water's not going to freeze up in there. In addition, you might want to buy a faucet cover. This helps cover up, and sometimes you can wrap newspaper around the faucet, put that in, that gives the extra insulation. This will snug up against your house. So that's a good tool to use on all of your outside faucets.
Oh, makes good sense. And I have a recommendation too. Go and get them soon, because I've found that if you wait till we have a freeze coming,
they're all gone.
They're gone. It's just like picking up food at a grocery store here in North Texas when it's cold. Okay, so let me ask you this also. Let's switch to Todd. Let's talk about the infrastructure, the pipes and pumps that get water to our homes. What happens as it ages?
Well, as it ages, it's like anything else. It starts to break down, and so that's a continual challenge. Probably our number one challenge at any utility across the country is maintaining our infrastructure. We can have all the water supply in the world, but if we can't get it to our customers every day and get it to them reliably, then our customers are not going to be happy. And so that's why we do spend a lot of time out in the field every day, making repairs and working on the system, and then also doing what we can to get the funding in place to be able to replace infrastructure. It's something that we have to do every year. You can't put it off for 10 or 15 years and then try to catch up. It gets really, really expensive in a hurry. So we try to put funding in place every year to replace the worst pipes and the worst issues we have in our system. And it's just something that you have to continually to stay after, and there's a big cost associated with that.
Oh, I can imagine. Can you tell us about some of the ongoing work to replace some of it that's taking place right now?
We have projects really throughout the city. We have some of our large sanitary sewer systems that we're actively working to replace that are 40, 50, 60 years old. What you'll find with those is the pipes will get to a point where they can actually collapse and block the flow off. We've had a couple of those major types of failures in the past, and so we really work to get out and try to get ahead of that now so that we don't have major failures with the sewer lines. And then also with the water lines, we try to predict as much as we can where we're seeing problems with the system and where we expect some of those future problems to occur. So it's really spread throughout the town. It's going to be focused more in areas that have older infrastructure, 40, 50-year-old pipes.
Okay. Yeah, we were taking a look at some of the work y'all are doing now, some of the construction sites. How do you decide what projects to tackle first? Is it just solely based on how old they are, or what do you do to decide?
Yeah, there's a number of different things we take into account. At the top of the list is going to be just the condition of the infrastructure. If we have a particular residential street where we've been out there month after month repairing the line, and that's going to make its way to the top of our list.
Okay.
So part of it's based on just what we're seeing with the system, the failures that we're seeing. Part of it may also be related to road work that's going on. If the city's going to go in and replace pavement, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get in there and also replace our water and sewer mains so that we don't have to go right back in a couple of years later and tear up that new pavement. So you'll see some coordination going on in some of those areas that we want to make sure we're replacing our infrastructure while the street is also getting replaced.
Wonderful. And you mentioned it can be very expensive. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, the financial angle of it all?
It is very expensive. If you look at our overall water and sewer system in Irving, we have about 700 miles of water mains, about 700 miles of wastewater mains. And then we have a raw water system that's about another 75 miles, so about 1,500 miles of pipe. thousands of valves, thousands of fire hydrants. We have a lot of things. And so if you look at the overall cost, if we had to go replace it all today, it'd be over $1 billion.
Wow.
To give you an idea of the cost of it. So that gets back to the point where we have to spend millions of dollars every year reinvested back in the system to keep it up to date and to keep it to where it's reliable. Because at the end of the day, everybody wants their system to work, to not be put out of service, and if they are put out of service, they want us out there quickly to take care of it. And then it's a big thing for fire safety too. When the fire department rolls up and hooks up to a fire hydrant, we need that hydrant to work, and we need the pipes and the pumps to be working as well. But it is a major investment for the city, and it's a major asset for the city that we need to take care of and to maintain.
So let me ask you this, since we're talking about finances, what goes into the decision of seeking a rate increase?
We have a number of things that drive our cost, and really infrastructure is where most of our money goes. If you look at labor and personnel costs, it's a small part of our overall budget. Most of it's on infrastructure. And one of the things that we've really struggled with the last few years, we contract out for water treatment and wastewater treatment. And we've seen our wastewater treatment costs go from really double, from about 10 million up to about 21 million over the last 10 years.
Wow.
And we've seen increases of about 5 million over the last 2 years alone. And so some of these costs, just for contracting for services that we would pass on to our customers, we've seen some major increases there. And the other thing is just maintaining our infrastructure and having to reinvest, 15, 20, 25 million back in the system every year, and making sure we have the money to do that to maintain a reliable system.
Thank you. And Donna, there's something I want to ask you about. I know there's a new service online called Water My Yard. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, that's something we're really excited about. It is a water conservation element we added about a little over a year ago, and the intent is that people can very easily register and get regular weekly information on how much supplemental water they need to use to irrigate their yard. And so what they do is they go to watermyyard.org. It'll automatically pinpoint a location for you. It'll say, I see your computer is here. And so you can choose another location, enter an address, or you can use the address it gives if that's accurate. And then it'll orient you toward either our north weather station or our south weather station, which we've installed to make sure we've got the weather covered in all parts of town. And it gathers a lot of data about the conditions, and it'll evaluate whether or not there is any need for supplemental water to be used for irrigation purposes. And you can also, by connecting through watermyyard.org, you can go into the ET network, which is the Texas ET network. And that'll give you day-to-day, week-to-week information on all of those weather conditions. So if you really want to know the details about how that's being evaluated and calculated, then you can go take a look at it. And you can also see what our rain amounts are on an ongoing basis. So it's a very helpful tool. And then when you register with your own email address every Monday morning, you will get an email letting you know if you're going to need to water any additionally based on the last 7 days of weather data.
Very interesting. Thank you. And something else I'm curious about, and that's the other questions you may get about water utilities. What are some of the most common questions you receive?
Well, people have difficulties at their residence, and they want to know how to read their meter, or they want to know if they have a leak, or how they could tell whether or not they have a leak. And so I have 3 staff members that take calls on a regular basis and go out. We'll meet a resident here in Irving at their home and talk to them, coach them about how to properly read their meter so that they can tell whether or not they're being billed correctly, and that's always an important thing to know. And then they will coach them on evaluating their irrigation system and whether or not they might have a leak there, and how to turn off the double check if they think they need to do that. They will also talk to them about where they may find leaks inside their home. And we have a week that we normally dedicate in March to Fix a Leak Week, where we're out there really pushing this message so that people understand that one of the big ways that water is lost is simply because we have leaks on an ongoing basis. And so they'll often give, say, a free toilet flapper that someone can install to make sure if they've got one that's leaking, because that happens to be a great source of leaks inside homes. We also have soil moisture meters, which we give away so that people understand when they use that moisture meter to evaluate the condition of their soil that they may be watering too frequently. And that tends to be the biggest problem, is that people are putting more water on than is necessary. And so they're spending more money for that water than they really need to.
Well, people love knowing that they can save money, and hopefully they'll get in touch with you guys and find out just how they can do that at their residence. Now, Todd, I want to ask you a question, because I know each year water quality reports are made available to Irving residents, and it has a lot of information in it, but what's the main point that we should take from it?
You know, the main point is we just want to communicate to everybody that the water is thoroughly tested. There are a lot of regulations. There are things that we test for every day. Not only the water as it goes through the treatment system, but also out in the distribution system. And so we want to let everybody know that we're testing for a lot of things and that the water is very safe. It meets all of the regulatory standards. So it's a way to get that information out into our customers' hands, and it's available on the website. So if somebody wants to look at the detail of that laboratory analysis, they can pull that up on the website and take a closer look at it.
Thank you. And we're just about out of time, but I see you pulling out some props over there, Donna, and I'm assuming you have something you want to show us right there.
I do. Well,
yes.
We talked about fog being a problem with the sanitary sewer system, but we have another problem that is escalating at this point. So we want to get the message out that people really need to look carefully at what they're flushing, and you should really only flush things in your toilet. No kitchen waste, only paper that will disintegrate very easily. A lot of people are flushing like makeup wipes, hand wipes that they may have, also diaper wipes, just as an example of some of the things that people might be flushing. One of the things that is easily confusing, because it says flushable cleansing cloths, makes you think that this is something that you can flush, but those things actually, especially if they mix with any sort of grease, cause problems for us and major clogs in parts of our system. So we're asking people to only flush those things that are appropriate for, even if it says flushable, check it. It's not something, if it's not going to disintegrate, you shouldn't be flushing it.
Yeah, I would definitely think you could. It says flushable cleansing wipes or cloth, so I'm glad that you brought that to our attention. Thank you. And one more thing I want to talk to you about real quickly, Donna, is the fact of conservation. One other tip is using native plants, I'm told. What impact can using particular plants, native plants, have?
Well, when you use those plants that are appropriate for this particular area, then they are accustomed to the amount of moisture that we receive in the form of precipitation. So they tend to thrive in that area. If you put in plants that need more water, you're going to have to water more often, you're going to have to use more water. That's not going to be conservation minded. And so if you're planting the native and adaptive plants, you're going to have more success, first of all, with the plant thriving, and then you're not going to have to spend a lot of extra money on irrigation.
Thank you. I mean, I have tons of questions I could ask you both all day, because this is very informative, but I want to ask you this, and that's the fact that you're involved in preparing the water utilities of employees for tomorrow, people that will do what you're doing, I'm sure, in the future. So tell me about that initiative.
We've had a great program in our school here, in fact the first in the state of Texas, where we were able to go out and provide some of the TCEQ licensing instruction to students so that when they graduate they can immediately take their licensing exam and become water operators in the state of Texas. And so we've been able to hire some of those students that have gone through the program successfully. Wow. And that's been very helpful to us just in terms of recruiting people and saving money on getting new folks to go to work for the city of Irving.
How exciting. Well, thank you. Thank you both for being here. And thank you for watching. I'm Starlene Stringer. Please be sure to join us on Thursday, January 15th for our next edition of Open Line. Police Chief Larry Boyd will be our guest. If you have questions, email them to ICTN@cityofirving.org, and we'll get answers for you on the next edition of Open Line. See you then.